Vivian Lane had spent 9 years waiting for Morton Elder to come back, never knowing that one promise to him might one day endanger more than her heart. In the narrow town of Bainville, white church steeples watched every quiet street, and every woman was expected to know her place. Folks called Vivian faithful. They said she was patient. They said a good woman knew how to wait.
That line has sat heavy with me for years. I'm Abel Beecham, though most folks around these parts simply call me Mr. B. I have heard many stories beside a pot-belly stove, but Vivian Lane stayed with me for one reason. Her suffering made almost no sound. Just a hidden book, a buried dream, and a young woman starving quietly while everyone called it virtue.
Behind the lace curtains of her father's house, Vivian felt that quiet hunger every day. She had wanted college once. She had hidden her books beneath folded linen and mended dresses, dreaming of classrooms, useful work, and a life where she could earn her own bread. Her father said no. A daughter did not need such things. A daughter obeyed. A daughter stayed clean, quiet, and ready for marriage. So Vivian stayed. And because no other future was allowed her, she kept her heart tied to Morton, the reckless boy who had once kissed her hand before leaving Bainville in shame. Years passed. Girls became wives. Wives became mothers. Vivian remained where Bainville had placed her, smiling gently while her own life waited like an unopened letter. But somewhere deep beneath duty and silence, a question had begun to burn. Was waiting really love? Or was it just a cage with prettier bars? Mrs. St. Cloud spoke of Morton as if he were Vivian's sacred duty. He was wild, yes, she would say, folding her soft hands in her lap. But the love of a faithful woman can save a man when nothing else can. Vivian wanted to believe her. It gave her waiting a purpose. It turned loneliness into virtue. It made 9 empty years sound almost holy. But Dr. Jane Belair did not speak that way. She had come to Bainville with clear eyes, firm steps, and a mind no one could shame into silence. She had studied medicine. She had made her own living. To Vivian, she seemed like living proof that a woman did not have to grow smaller just to be called good. One afternoon, in Mrs. St. Cloud's parlor, the respectable women of Bainville sat with teacups in their hands, praising patience as a woman's highest grace. Dr. Belair listened for a moment. Then she set her cup down and said plainly, "Ignorance is not purity. It is only darkness." The room went still. Mrs. St. Cloud's smile tightened, but Dr. Belair did not look away. Vivian felt those words strike something locked inside her. For years, she had been told that a woman's highest calling was to wait, forgive, and redeem. But Dr. Belair looked at her as if she were not a sacrifice waiting to happen. She looked at Vivian as if she were a life still beginning. And for the first time, Vivian wondered whether obedience had been mistaken for goodness all along. The chance came through Dr. Belair. Miss Arella Elder had spent too many years caring for others and asking little for herself. But far away in Colorado, she owned a place called the Cottonwoods, a wide boarding house shaded by tall trees and open sky. To the people of Bainville, the plan sounded shameful and improper. Women leaving home, women earning money, women making their own way. To Dr. Belair, it sounded like freedom. You can stay here and grow smaller, she told them, or go west and find out what you are made for. So Miss Arella made her choice. Vivian chose to follow. Susie Elder joined them too, bright-eyed and restless. Grandma Pettigrew packed her sharp tongue, her common sense, and enough courage for all of them. Dr. Belair joined the journey as the steady hand that helped them begin. On the morning they left, trunks were hauled to the depot, tickets were clutched in gloved hands, and Bainville neighbors watched as if the women were doing something shameful instead of brave. When the train pulled away, Vivian looked through the window and saw Bainville shrink behind her like an old locked door. Fear rose in her throat. She had never truly chosen anything for herself before, but mile by mile the land opened wider. The sky grew larger. The air felt less like permission withheld and more like breath returning. For the first time, Vivian was not waiting for Morton. She was moving toward her own life. The Cottonwoods did not feel like any home Vivian had ever known. It woke before sunrise with boots on the porch, pans ringing in the kitchen, and horses stamping near the rail. By supper, the house was full of voices, dusty coats, hungry boarders, and children chasing one another down the hall. Among the newer arrivals was Mrs. St. Cloud, who had come west from Bainville to spend a season in Colorado. Miss Arella welcomed her to stay at the Cottonwoods, where she soon settled into the busy life of the boarding house. Everyone needed something done. Miss Arella, who had once seemed timid in Bainville, stood straighter with every passing week. She kept the account book, planned meals, settled quarrels, and learned that managing a boarding house was not weakness. It was command. Susie bloomed in the open air, especially when Jimmy Saunders began calling with wildflowers in his hand, an honest devotion in his eyes. And Vivian found herself useful. She added columns in the account book, soothed crying children, helped arrange rooms, and learned the steady rhythm of work that mattered. No one told her she was too delicate to think. No one told her usefulness made her less womanly. Then came Dr. Richard Hale. He was quiet, steady, and grave, with a black medical bag in one hand and a guarded look in his eyes. He was gentle with the sick and kind to children, yet strangely cold whenever anyone spoke lightly of love or marriage. Still, he never praised Vivian like a pretty picture. He asked what she thought. That simple respect unsettled her more than flattery ever could. At night, beneath the whispering cottonwood trees, Vivian began to imagine a future not built on waiting. Maybe she could teach children. Maybe she could earn her own way. Maybe a woman's life could begin long before marriage. Then one dusty afternoon, Morton Elder appeared at the Cottonwoods, as if the past had found the road west. Vivian saw him first from the front porch. He came up the road with his coat hanging loose on his shoulders and a travel bag in his hand. He was thinner than memory. Paler, too. The reckless brightness she remembered had faded into something restless and strained. But when he smiled, Vivian saw the boy who had once hidden a little book for her beneath the Bainville elms, back when her father said books were no use to a daughter. "Vivian," Morton said softly, "I came back for you." Those words struck the old, tender place in her heart. For years, she had imagined this moment. She had pictured apology, reunion, and joy. But standing before him now, she felt something else beneath the sweetness. Unease. Morton spoke of mistakes, loneliness, and how her love might yet make a better man of him. He looked at her as though she were medicine, shelter, and salvation, all in one. When Dr. Hale stepped onto the porch and offered to look him over after his long journey, Morton gave a quick laugh. "No need, doctor," he said. "I am only tired from the road." But his hand shook when he reached for the porch rail. Dr. Hale watched him with quiet concern. Dr. Belair watched Vivian. That evening, Morton walked beside Vivian beneath the cottonwoods. The sun was low and the dust from the road still clung to his boots. "I can change," he told her. "If you love me, I know I can." Vivian wanted to believe him. Then Morton took her hand and she felt his fingers tremble against hers. For the first time, the man before her seemed more like a warning than a dream. The garden party at the Cottonwoods should have been all music, flowers, and warm laughter. Lanterns hung from the porch. Fiddles played near the open windows. Boarders and neighbors talked beneath the trees while the last light stretched across the grass. But Vivian felt Morton's eyes on her wherever she moved. Near sunset, while the others were listening to a song, Morton came to her side and lowered his voice. "Walk with me, Vivian. Just for a moment." She hesitated, but Mrs. St. Cloud, standing nearby, gave her a soft, approving smile. "A faithful woman does not wound a man when he is trying to be better," Mrs. St. Cloud murmured. So Vivian went with him. Morton led her down a side path, still close enough for the music to be heard, but far enough that no one could hear every word. The cottonwoods cast long shadows over the grass. "You waited for me," Morton said, his voice shaking. "Do not turn from me now." Vivian tried to step back, but Morton caught both her hands and held them too tightly. "I need you," he whispered. "You are the only good thing left in my life. Promise you will marry me." Her heart pounded. She remembered Bainville and all the years it had praised her for waiting. She heard Mrs. St. Cloud's soft voice telling her that faithful love could save a man. And for one painful moment, Vivian could not separate the girl she had been from the boy Morton used to be. She felt pity, she felt shame, she felt trapped between kindness and fear. "Morton, please," she said. But he only tightened his grip and drew closer. At last, trembling and confused, Vivian gave the answer everyone had taught her was noble. Yes. Morton let go of her hands and smiled as if he had been saved. But Vivian felt no joy. Only cold dread settling in her chest, as though she had just locked the door on her own future. Dr. Hale was the first to understand what everyone else had missed. It was not only Morton's pale face, trembling hands, or the way he had refused a doctor's care. It was the fear in him. The look of a man trying to outrun a sickness he did not want named. After the garden party, when the lanterns were being taken down and the last guests were leaving, Dr. Hale drew Dr. Belair aside near the back porch. Their voices were low. Their faces were grave. The next morning, Dr. Belair found Vivian alone in the sitting room, sitting stiffly beside the window with her hands folded in her lap. "My dear," Dr. Belair said gently, "there is something you must know before you marry Morton." Vivian's fingers tightened in her skirt. Dr. Belair sat across from her, close enough to be kind, but steady enough not to hide the truth. Morton was ill. Not with a passing fever, not with weakness that love could cure. He carried a private disease that could pass from husband to wife and from mother to child. Vivian went white. No one had ever taught her such danger existed. She had been raised to know nothing and call that innocence. Dr. Belair's voice softened. "Marriage to Morton could bring you pain and lasting illness," she said. "And if you had children, they could suffer before they ever had a chance to live." Vivian covered her mouth. All at once, her promise was no longer a romantic duty. It was a choice over her own body, her future children, and the lives silence might destroy. Dr. Belair reached across and took Vivian's hand. "The truth is painful," she said, "but it belongs to you." And in that terrible moment, Vivian understood. The truth had not ruined love. The truth had finally given her the right to choose. Morton came to Vivian that evening with hope still shining in his tired eyes. She was standing beneath the cottonwoods near the side porch, where the last light lay soft on the grass. Her hands were folded tight, and her heart ached with grief for the boy she had once loved. She did not hate Morton. That was the hardest part. "I cannot marry you," she said. Morton's face changed as if she had struck him. "You promised." "I promised before I knew the truth." His mouth tightened. "Then your love was never real." The words cut deep, but Vivian did not step back. "If love means I must risk my life in ignorance, then it is not love," she said. "If love means bringing children into suffering because I was too afraid to know the truth, then it is not goodness." Morton's shame turned quickly into anger. "So I am to be punished forever?" "No," Vivian answered, trembling. "But I will not be punished with you, and I will not let innocent children pay for what silence kept from both of us." For a moment, the only sound was the evening wind moving through the leaves. Then the side porch door opened. Dr. Belair stepped out first and came to Vivian's side. Grandma Pettigrew followed, her face stern with protection. Dr. Hale stopped near the porch steps, quiet and watchful. They had not come to speak for Vivian. They had come to stand with her. Morton looked at them all and understood that Vivian was no longer alone. His eyes hardened. Without another word, he turned toward the road and walked away into the fading light. Vivian watched him go with tears in her eyes. She had lost the dream that had carried her through 9 lonely years, but for the first time in her life, her sorrow belonged to a free woman. Morton left the Cottonwoods before dawn. His horse's tracks were still fresh in the pale Colorado dust when Vivian stepped onto the porch. By breakfast, his empty chair seemed to accuse her. Mrs. St. Cloud's disappointment arrived like cold rain. "A woman's heart was made to forgive," she said. "You have chosen pride over devotion." For one breath, Vivian almost believed her. She wondered if she had been cruel. She wondered if turning away from Morton meant turning away from every tender memory she had carried for 9 lonely years. She grieved Morton. She grieved the girl who had waited for him. She grieved the dream that had kept her alive through so many narrow years. But Dr. Belair would not let grief become a prison. "You have always had a gift with children," she told Vivian. "Let that gift build something no one can take from you." Within weeks, Dr. Belair helped Vivian open a small kindergarten in a bright room at the Cottonwoods. The first morning, only a few children came, shy and dusty, holding slates and lunch pails. Vivian knelt before them and smiled. Soon the room filled with songs, small hands, bright questions, and the solemn wonder of children learning that the world was larger than fear. For the first time, Vivian earned money of her own. She paid her board. She bought her books. She stood at the end of each day tired, useful, and unashamed. Morton had once asked her to save him, but the work taught Vivian a quieter truth. A woman did not have to disappear into someone else's need to prove she had love to give. When Susie married Jimmy Saunders, the Cottonwoods filled with music again. There was laughter on the porch, wild flowers in Susie's hair, and tears shining in Miss Aurella's eyes. Jimmy looked at his bride as if every hard mile of the world had led him straight to her. For a little while, Vivian let herself believe joy could come without a shadow. Then, months later, the baby came too early. By midnight, the house that had once danced with wedding songs was still as a churchyard. Lanterns burned low in the upstairs bedroom. Susie lay white-faced and trembling beneath the quilts, her breath shallow, while Jimmy knelt beside the bed with terror in his eyes. Dr. Hale worked steadily at Susie's side. Dr. Belair gave calm, firm orders no one dared question. Vivian moved where she was needed. She carried warm water from the kitchen. She folded clean cloths on the bedside table. She whispered courage to Susie when the young mother was too weak to answer. Then the baby came, tiny and silent for one terrible breath. Vivian froze. Dr. Belair took the child, rubbed its back with a warm cloth, and spoke in a low, urgent voice. "Breathe, little one." At last the baby gave a thin cry. Jimmy bowed his head and wept. Vivian held that fragile life against her heart and understood, deeper than before, what had been at stake with Morton. Motherhood was not a pretty word spoken over tea. It was blood, breath, danger, hope, and responsibility. Near dawn, Susie's breathing grew steadier. Jimmy wrapped both hands around his wife's hand and cried openly beside her. Vivian looked across the dim room at Dr. Hale. Something hard in his face had softened. Later, when the baby slept and Susie rested, Vivian found Dr. Hale standing alone in the hallway outside the sick room. The lantern light showed the sorrow he tried to hide. "You tell others to guard themselves from pain," Vivian said gently. "But sometimes bitterness is only fear pretending to be wisdom." Dr. Hale looked away, because she had touched an old wound he was not ready to name. And Vivian knew she had awakened a pain he had kept buried for some time. The days after Susie's recovery changed Dr. Hale. He still moved quietly through the Cottonwoods. He still spoke little. But Vivian saw the weight in him now, the sorrow he carried like an old scar beneath his coat. One evening, after the sick room had grown quiet and Susie was sleeping peacefully, Vivian found him outside near the Cottonwoods. The sun had dropped low. The porch lamps were beginning to glow behind them. For a while, neither one spoke. Then Dr. Hale looked toward the darkening road and told her the truth. Years ago, Dr. Hale had seen what unguarded admiration could become. Mrs. St. Cloud, then known as Mrs. James, was young, gracious, and admired by many. Among them was Dr. Hale's younger brother, Joe. Joe gave her his heart. She had never promised him her own. Yet the hope he cherished ended in heartbreak, and that heartbreak helped lead the young man toward ruin, and, in time, an early grave. Dr. Hale buried his brother and carried the sorrow for years. "I swore I would never love again," he said. "I thought women brought ruin." Vivian did not answer softly just to comfort him. "No," she said. "One woman hurt you. Grief did the rest." He looked at her, startled. Vivian stepped closer, but not too close. Her voice stayed gentle and steady. "If I had judged all men by Morton, I would have closed my heart forever. But pain is not truth unless we make it our master." For a long moment, Dr. Hale said nothing. Then the sternness left his face. "You have more courage than any woman I have known," he said. "And I love you for it. Not as someone helpless, not as someone to rescue. As a woman who has taught me how to believe again." Vivian's eyes filled with tears. Dr. Hale reached for her hand, then stopped, as if even love must ask permission. Vivian looked down at his open hand and placed her fingers in his. For one quiet breath, they stood close enough that a kiss could have happened, but Dr. Hale did not take one. He only bowed his head over her hand and waited. This time, love did not come as pressure, pity, or fear. It stood before Vivian plainly, with respect in its hands, waiting for her free answer. When Susie and the baby were strong enough to sit near the hearth, the Cottonwoods gathered around them like one large family. A fire glowed low in the grate. Coffee steamed on the side table. Outside, the cottonwood leaves whispered in the evening wind. Miss Arella poured coffee with proud, steady hands. Jimmy sat close to Susie, holding their child as if he had been trusted with the whole future. Grandma Pettigrew watched from her chair, sharp-eyed as ever, though her heart had gone soft at the sight of that baby. Then Dr. Belair looked across the room at Vivian. "There are lives in this house tonight," she said, "because women were allowed to know the truth and act on it." The room grew quiet. Vivian lowered her eyes, but Grandma Pettigrew reached over and took her hand. "You did right, child," she said. "Do not ever let anyone make shame out of courage." Mrs. St. Cloud sat stiffly in the corner. Her old gospel of female suffering seemed small now, measured against Susie's living child, Vivian's steady face, and the home these women had built together. No sermon could answer that. Vivian looked around the Cottonwoods and saw what Bainville had never offered her. Work, friendship, children, love without chains, marriage without blindness, a home where women could earn, nurse, teach, choose, and still be cherished. Then Dr. Hale came to her side. He did not claim her. He did not rescue her. He simply offered his hand. Vivian took it freely, not as a girl waiting to be chosen, not as a sacrifice laid at a man's feet, but as a woman who had learned that truth protects love better than silence ever could. Months later, beneath those same cottonwood trees, Vivian stood beside Dr. Hale in a simple white dress while the Cottonwoods gathered around them once more. Susie held her healthy baby close. Miss Arella wept openly. Grandma Pettigrew pretended not to. Dr. Belair smiled like a woman who had seen justice take root. And when Dr. Hale lifted Vivian's hand, he did not hold it like a prize. He held it like a promise. Vivian chose him with clear eyes, a free heart, and no shame left in her soul. And beneath the whispering cottonwoods, she finally understood. Innocence was never ignorance. Real love begins when a woman is free to know, free to choose, and free to live without shame.
Thank you for watching this story all the way to the end. If you enjoyed it, please like and share. It really helps us. And subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Before you go, rate this story 0 to 10 in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. I'll see you in the next tale.